bonus, not a normal episode.
Remake Rewind.
Thank you for listening to another boners episode of Remake Rewind.
I'm running out of boners.
Hi, Mike is running out of. We're almost done with the boners. At least for the Fast franchise, we're almost done.
Yeah.
So
We're all
this
out of
is
boners.
Mike as always. I've got Alex. What's up, bud?
Hey, I'm Alex. I'm here.
Hey. So we did Point Break and Fast and the Furious going on 3 months ago. It's been just over 3 months since we did that bonus or that topic episode. Did that back in August. We decided we wanted to watch the rest of the Fast movies, and over the course of the 8 movies, we decided we're going to add on Hobbs and Shaw and Better Luck Tomorrow. I think is the side quest movie with Han.
That's right.
So this is the last one until obviously Fast 9 comes out sometime next year. I think we're going to have to try to break down the timeline finally.
Yeah.
I found a
It's time.
timeline. I sent it to you, but as soon as I sent it to you, I realized that timeline makes no goddamn sense. So we'll break it down as we get through this movie, because that one actually gave years and assigned years to the movies, not necessarily the year that the movie came out, but like the year that the movie was supposed to have taken place.
Right.
And it does not work.
That's interesting. I would have believed it if you had told me, because it's already so confusing. You could just put anything in front of me, and I believe that it's correct.
So we're on the 8th movie, Fate of the Furious, the last one of the bunch.
F8.
And I thought that the way that I was going to try to sync up the timelines and figure out how everything worked was based off the kids' ages.
It should be Fate of the Furious, because it should be FF8 for Fast and Furious 8.
So when this movie was marketed, it was Fate of the Furious, and then after it came out on like DVD, they changed it and put like the F8 and just made it like Elite. That should have just been Fate of the Furious the entire time with F8.
It should have been Fate.
Fate.
Yeah.
So I sent you this timeline. So the original movie the first Fast and the Furious movie came out in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So this timeline changes it and basically makes Fast and the Furious 4, Fast and Furious, the kind of the baseline timeline, because that was like the soft reboot. So that movie came out in 2009. And they're also putting this timeline as that also took place in 2009. So that retroactively makes Fast and the Furious 2004. I can be on board with that.
Yeah, that's
Fast
fine.
and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on when in 2004 this was, that makes sense because it's supposed to be, just a few months later.
Right.
So that makes sense. Better Luck Tomorrow is 2006, 2007. We haven't watched that yet. That could totally be plausible. 2007, 2008, I have one of the shorts where Dom and Han meet in Mexico. So that's, one of the bonus features on a movie, on one of the discs. 2009 is Los Bandoleros. I can't fucking speak Spanish. Los Bandoleros. Thank you. Which is like Dom's kind of like, where has he been the last few movies? Because between Fast and the Furious 1 and Fast and the Furious 4.
Right.
2009 is supposed to have Fast and Furious and Fast 5. That makes sense based off our conversations. We were saying Fast 5 should only be a few weeks to a couple of months after Fast 4. Mm-hmm. So at first I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Then it says Fast and the Furious 6 is in 2010. Yeah, that makes sense. The kid's born at the beginning of the movie.
What year did it actually come out?
That one was like 2013, I think.
Weird.
So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Actually, no, I'm sorry. That's 2013. Fast and the Furious 7 was 2015. So this kind of makes sense. So Fast and the Furious 6 being in 2010, a year after Fast 4 and Fast 5, makes sense. That's when the baby's born. You have the 9 months of pregnancy. That fits. And then it says 2013 to 2014 is Tokyo Drift and Fast and the Furious 7. So that's skipping 3 years, which initially you can go, that actually almost makes sense based off the kid's age. Jack, who's Mia and Brian's kid, that kid's looks like he's between 2 and 3 years old. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. The problem is in Fast and the Furious 7, Letty has a line where she says, it's only been a few weeks for me, but you have 15 years worth of memories. So that already kind of fucks that up a little bit. But that if it was 3 years later, it makes Tokyo Drift make sense, because based off our calculations, we were saying that Han could have only been in Tokyo for a few weeks to a few months building that empire. So the 3 years makes more logical sense, but there are a few lines that throw it off.
Yeah.
What breaks this one, though, is Fast and the Furious 8. The whole crutch of this movie is Dom goes evil because he's trying to save his son that he didn't know about.
Right.
If Fast 8 is supposed to take place, let's say it's a year after Fast and the Furious 7. Let's say it's immediately after Fast and the Furious 7. It's 3 years after Fast and the Furious 6. The beginning of Fast and the Furious 6 is the last time that we know that Dom and Elena were together.
Yeah. And I mean,
so this baby's like, so my degree is in human development with an emphasis on child development. That kid is at most 6 months old.
yeah.
He's got good head control. He can lift his head up. At most 5-6 months old. But I would say based off size, I'd probably say that baby's like 4 months old.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a small 5-month-old baby.
4 to 6 months.
Yeah. So 4 to 6 months. That means Fast 6, Fast 7, Fast 8 would have to be at most about a year and a half, the 9 months worth of pregnancy. So let's just assume the morning that we see Elena and Dom waking up in Fast 6, he impregnated her that day. This could be no more than a year and a half after. Yeah.
Yeah.
No more than a year and a half after. And this timeline is positing that it's 3 to 4 years after.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Maybe Dom and Letty have like an open relationship.
So I was reading a couple articles, and like some writer or producer said that Elena had the baby sometime between 6 and 7.
No shit.
So
right,
it falls apart. It doesn't make any sense. There is no timeline that you could put this together and make it make sense.
Yeah, I think it's fitting that we reach this in almost the last of the main saga, where we've been fretting about this timeline for however many
4 or 5
episodes
movies
now. And the answer is it's just wrong. There's no way to make it make sense.
Just fucking watch the movies and enjoy them.
They're making it up as they go, and if they need it for that movie, then it works. And I think there's some more of that in Hobbs and Shaw, right? Because like they play together as
watch it.
Yeah, they're like playing together as kids, but he's 20 years older than her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jason Statham and I can't remember, Vanessa Kirby. Yeah, they're like 24 years apart.
And then I think The Rock's daughter is a different age or something too.
Yeah, we'll have to watch it. That's the next one, so we'll discuss it then. But just it doesn't make any sense. We've tried to make sense of this franchise. We've enjoyed it thus far, for the most part. Yeah. But I don't think we're ever going to figure this out. So I think we just need to move past it and get into Fate of the Furious.
Case closed.
It's like Mythbusters, like unconfirmed or whatever it was when the myth wasn't busted.
Timeline busted.
Yeah. Nope. Doesn't work. Yeah. So this one is obviously the newest one. I've only seen this. I think this might be my third time watching it, maybe fourth. So I definitely saw it in theaters.
My second.
I saw it when it came out on Blu-ray. I don't know if I think I may have started it once trying to get Katrina to watch it, and she was just like, no.
Good for her.
And but I think I said in the past that the second movie is like my least favorite. I think this is probably my second to last one.
Yeah, this one was like not really enjoyable.
It's only I would say like the last 20 minutes or so are solid. And then the rest of it
I don't know if solid is the word that I would use, but there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's just, to me, there is no flow to this. I don't feel like there's that action set piece that defines this movie like a lot of the other ones. Like, you have that submarine, but I don't feel like it was grounded in anything. Like, all the other ones had these big spectacular events, which are super unrealistic, but for whatever reason, they felt more grounded than this one did.
Yeah. Let's stay on that for a second, because I think that's sort of my chief beef with it. Chief beef with Alex Polisi. Go. All the movies, like the past like 4 movies, right, are slowly getting less grounded, and we're kind of okay with it. And after 4 movies, you look back and go, oh, these guys are like superheroes now, but instead of Stark suits, they have cars or whatever. And it's kind of silly, but like in a vacuum from movie to movie, it's not super noticeable. But I think this is the one that's the most noticeable, where it's like, oh, The Rock is just Hulk now. He's just he's impenetrable. Like bullets don't hurt him. His strength is fucking whatever they need it to be at the time, and it doesn't go down super well. There's a bunch of moments in this where I was like, The Rock is like, okay, I get it. The Rock is a fucking tough guy. Like he's a walking hard on, and it just like wasn't fun after a little bit.
I think that's fair, and it's just like the flow of this movie. Like the pacing was weird, and this is like the longest one. This one's like over 2.5 hours long.
And it's so melodramatic.
I watched the director's cut. You didn't. The director's cut's 13 minutes longer, and it's very minor differences. There's a few jokes that they let run longer. They give Tyrese a little bit more screen time.
Oh, good.
Which
more
is
Roman.
Unfortunate. Yeah. And then they have some more risque jokes. So like, there's a joke when they're in nowhere and they're learning like who Cypher is, where The Rock as Hobbs says to Shaw, like, I'm gonna slap that dick garage off your face or some shit like that.
That's another thing, dude. The Rock like has a bunch of insults where he's just calling somebody else a woman.
Yeah, it's weird, and like in every one of the movies that The Rock's been in since 5, 6, 7 so far, he has this little like weird, I don't like, it's weird, like he has like almost like what we think of as like Southern, like, I don't know what's the term, but like these expressions that you hear in other movies of like, of like that you would think you would have a character from the Deep South, but like we find out in Hobbs vs. Shaw, like he grew up in like Guam or Hawaii. I don't remember which place they actually go to.
But he's also like the most American tough guy.
Yeah, but he has like these stupid expressions, and they're kind of funny when they're not in it very much. But in this one, it's like so over the top in the way he says it. Like there's one point where he's like, what is the line? Let me look.
I'm going to beat you like a Cherokee drum.
He says that, but the way he enunciates, he's like, I'm going to beat you like a Cherokee drum. Like, it's weird. He goes like Kentucky Fried on it. And it's...
I think I know what you're talking about. There's one where they push in on him super close and he like dials up his accent.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I wrote it down.
While you're doing that, I mean, they're silly and they're definitely like way more over the top in this one. But I also just noticed that as they're more frequent, he also is just revisiting this well of calling somebody a woman over and over and over. And, you know, a little bit of that like fits with that character or whatever. But after a certain point, I was like, why is he just calling all these people women as if it's a bad thing? Like, enough. There must be another joke.
It's toxic masculinity, bro. I can't find it, but I just remembered what it was. But he says when Mr. Nobody is like, hey, the only two people who've ever been able to track down Dom are in this room. It's you, Hobbs, and it's Shaw. And he's like, if you think I'm going to work with this tea and crumpet eating some bitch, like he doesn't like, he takes some bitch and like has it go like 17 syllables. It's like, it's a little over the top. And I like The Rock, and I did not like his character in this movie.
Yeah, me either. I'm looking through my notes trying to pick out what other Rock stuff.
It's just I don't know how to explain it. Like, once again, it's the longest movie, and there's just, I don't know if not having Dom in it, and part of this was maybe we should just bring it up at the front end because then we can point out things as we talk about the movie. But this was the one where the Rock, Vin Diesel, Tyrese beef really kind of started. So the movie was still going. The Rock had wrapped his portion, and he like put on Instagram or Twitter or something. Let me see what he said. So he goes, "This is my final week of shooting. #Fast and Furious 8. There's no other franchise that gets my blood boiling more than this one. An incredible, hardworking crew. Universal has been great partners as well. My female co-stars are always amazing, and I love them. My male co-stars, however, are a different story. Some conduct themselves as stand-up men and true professionals, while others don't. The ones that don't are too chicken shit to do anything about it anyway. Candy asses. When you watch this movie next April and it seems like I'm not acting in some of these scenes and my blood is legit boiling, you're right." And it goes on. And Vin Diesel made a statement not too long after saying they had him and The Rock had a meeting. They got everything out in the air and there's no bad blood and everything's great. There's clarity. And then The Rock was like, "All the best, and I harbor no ill will there just because of the clarity you have. Actually, you can erase the last part about no ill will. We'll just keep it with the clarity. So he basically doubled down and was like, Vin Diesel's a prick. And then it came out that Vin Diesel is now one of the main producers of this. He has script approval. He has casting approval. He basically gets to greenlight every decision on these movies.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I get it at this point. But apparently and I've heard this before, obviously their contracts with they can't lose fights, they can't do this, they can't do that, they have to look like tough guys the whole time. He apparently was late to set like 6 hours one day, and that's what set The Rock off. And he's like, because The Rock is a professional, he's fucking working all the goddamn time, and he cares. I've heard he's a really nice guy and cares about the crew, and he was just pissed because like there were hundreds of people on set who couldn't do shit because they were waiting for Vin Diesel. Yeah. And then him and Tyrese got in a beef because between this movie wrapping and before it actually released, they announced the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. And then they were going to do the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff before Fast 9. And so Tyrese started like attacking The Rock on like Twitter and Instagram, and The Rock was just like, whatever. So Tyrese dropped an album, and it happened to be near someplace that The Rock was. So The Rock was invited to like the album release party, and at the party he was on like Instagram Live and was like, dude, Tyrese's album is fucking shit, and just bashed it. And so then like Tyrese went and just posted all these things about how shitty The Rock is and how The Rock doesn't give a shit about the rest of his co-stars and he just wants his money. And then he backpedaled and said, I'm really sorry, I'm going through a messy divorce, I don't have enough money to pay for it, and I'm not going to be able to see my kid unless I get this movie, and because The Rock has to do Hobbs and Shaw first, I don't get to do Fast 9, which means I'm not going to get a paycheck for like a whole nother year, and just like put all his like dirty laundry out there on social media. It was fucking weird.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very fun.
But you can tell in this movie, like as you watch, there are no scenes where you see The Rock and Vin Diesel like in the same frame.
Yeah, and some of that's by design because Vin Diesel's a bad guy in this movie. Should we talk about a lot of it, what the movie's about?
Yeah, let's do it. Go, just wrap it up for me. Sum it up.
Well, Vin Diesel and Charlize Theron share a stolen kiss and decide to be partners on a heist to help out Charlize Theron's character Cypher, who is the author of all of Vin Diesel's pain, and seduces him to the dark side. Also, Vin Diesel has a son, and everybody is trying to stop his reign of terror while also figuring out why he'd turn his back on family.
And
there's a nuclear sub.
Like this whole conceit, and we find out almost right away, like they don't even try to hide the Cypher being the puppet behind everything, which still doesn't really make sense because we were led to believe that Owen Shaw was supposed to be the puppet master of everything, because in Fast 6, Paul Walker goes to Los Angeles to hit the drug dealer from the 4th movie and be like, hey, what's going on with this guy? We found out you worked with him. And he's like, oh yeah, I was his protege. He was responsible for everything. He got my cartel going. He's got the British cartel going.
Yeah.
So we were led to believe that Luke Evans' character was kind of like the kingpin of the Fast and the Furious
There's
world.
an even bigger bad person.
So yeah, then we find out. So in this movie, we find out that Charlize Theron was trying to get the whole plot of Fast 6 was her hiring Luke Evans' character to get the Nightshade. And then the Fast and the Furious 7 getting God's Eye, same thing. Like, she actually wanted God's Eye, and they prevented her from getting it. So it's like, yeah, everything was now her, which is just absurd. So you can push her influence back to technically, I guess, the 4th movie.
Yeah. And that also absolves Owen Shaw from killing Han, apparently.
Right. And Deckard Shaw in this movie, because he's now has to be, well, Owen Shaw's kind of redeemed too, because he was working for this, and we find out that he had a bad, like in this movie they mention in the last movie, and then they mention in this movie, we find out that the parents were criminals, and they tried to go legit, and they tried to go and be in the military and be good citizens, and were corrupted because their parents were criminals. And this one we find out that Deckard Shaw was like the most decorated like black ops person, and then got framed just like Hobbs did. Like Hobbs got burned and blacklisted at the beginning of this movie because Dom fucked up their heist. So
right.
We find out that Deckard Shaw, we're supposed to believe that he's actually a good dude, even though we've seen him kill countless people between 6, 7, and this movie.
That's another thing that bugged me about this movie is like the body count seemed a lot higher just in general, right?
So, absolutely. So just
Like-
to kind of skip to the end. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say Vin Diesel. I think when they're in New York, just drives his car through like a florist to avoid his team who are trying to corral him or whatever. And I don't know, man, could have killed a lot of people. I'm not sure I understand how that's worth it.
And so, like, you know, if a bad guy has a body count, you can wave that away. They're the bad guy. But the good guys in this one, in the last movie, in Fast and the Furious 7, when they were hunting Deckard Shaw, when all of them were taking their little nap after stealing the supercar from the skyscraper, Vin Diesel's like, hey, my team are drivers. They're not killers. We're going to go kill Deckard Shaw, just you, me, and your crew, Mr. Nobody. And then Paul Walker's like, I'm coming too. But they made a point of saying they're not killers, even though they had killed some bad guys. In this one,
Letty is just holding a fucking AR-15 with a million attachments on it, blowing dudes away.
she kicks a guy into a propeller.
Yeah.
And people gross. There's one kill.
And they're just
that
like,
I wrote
they kill like dozens of Russian separatists. Like, I guess they're the bad guy, quote unquote, but like they're taking a lot of lives.
So there's a point where like Tej, like throughout the movie, we see this tank like 2 or 3 times in like the good guy, Mr. Nobody. There's also Little Nobody played by Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son. Who I've got some stuff to say about him in a minute, but we see this tank in like their little warehouse, and he's like, no one's going to drive the tank. And then at the end of the movie, Tej gets the tank, and he takes over. It has like this giant machine gun on the top of it, and he kills like 3 or 4 bad guy cars, which presumably are filled with 3 or 4 dudes.
Yeah.
So he conservatively kills half a dozen people at least.
Yeah.
And Letty's laughing as he's killing people. Like we've been told that they are not killers. They go out of their way not to do this, and like they're literally laughing at the blood on their hands in this one.
Yeah, and like Dom is maybe a little bit more experienced than these guys in the art of war or whatever. But there's a couple scenes in this where Dom is like, no, I'm like giving the movie
some credit.
Yeah, just this for the sake of the argument. But there's a couple scenes in this where Dom is like basically doing Black Ops missions. And like there's one specifically when Cypher controls all of the cars in 5 city blocks in New York.
That was stupid.
And makes them all crash into people. That was like I don't know, that was one of the more innovative things that this movie did, I think. Whether or not it's stupid, like they have to find a way to up the ante of the last movie, and that was pretty interesting. Let me make my point though. Yeah. At the climax of that scene, all of these cars are there to box in this Russian emissary or diplomat or whatever who has a nuclear football.
Yeah, he's the Secretary of Defense.
So they box him in, and then Dom walks over a bunch of destroyed cars to get to this this limousine with a guy inside, and it's like bulletproof. There's no way inside, blah blah. But Dom is like head to toe in the ridiculous like
Gears of
outfit.
War head.
Yeah, Gears of War outfit, and he has like a Gears of War chainsaw that he uses to cut a hole in the gas tank.
Shield.
Which, like, if you can cut a hole to get into the gas tank, why can't you just get into the car itself? Anyway, so all that's happening, and Dom's like threatening to kill this guy, and I'm just like, weren't these guys all drivers? At what point did Dom learn any of this? And I think we said this in the last 2 movies, but it's just like, these guys are street racers. When did they learn how to operate any of this equipment or do any of this stuff? Dom's threatening to drop a flare gun into the gas tank and kill these guys.
So to take it even a step further, like there's certain characters where I would excuse this. So like there's a point where Dom, who is not a tech savvy person, we've never seen him work a computer. We've never seen him do anything outside of a car besides using his like fists. Like he's a very physical person.
Yeah.
But in this one,
he thought this was going to be a street fight.
He's able that too, but there's a point where he has to. We find out at the end of the movie, but we see him like tinkering with his necklace, and he put like a transponder in that. Like we see him like soldering and shit, and he put a tracking beacon in like his little necklace that he has in all the movies, and somehow Cypher doesn't detect this. Okay, fine. I'll wave that away because he didn't turn it on or some shit like that. Fine. How the fuck does he know how to do that?
Yeah.
That's one issue. But then later on in the movie, so he's coerced into being a bad guy because this woman is going to kill his son and family's most important to him. I can buy that. But there's a point where he has like his car where like they have to get to New York and he has to go kill that guy or get the nuclear football that you mentioned from the Russian Secretary of Defense. And he's driving and he has this like kill switch on his car. And he like, his car deactivates and he's like, hey, my car doesn't work. I need to fix it. And Cypher's like, I don't believe this. It's like, well, one, why are you not inspecting his car? Like he has this like giant gizmo in his car. Like, why are you letting anything go to chance? But fine, she doesn't inspect his car. But then he has like set up this like super elaborate way to defeat God's Eye, something that was unblockable, you could not defeat God's Eye.
All he did was park in an alley.
He parked in an alley and then he got another car to bounce off, block the alley. And it's just like, how did he know where there was going to be a place with no cameras? How did he know? Because like we find out in this, they can even go further with God's Eye, like zoom in on metallic surfaces and try to bounce light off of different things. So he found like the one spot in New York where you can't see shit.
Not only is it's not even cameraless. There is a camera there. He just happens to know exactly where to park so that if he opens his hood, the top of his hood reaches the top of the frame. Like, how could he possibly know that?
And then there's one across the street in an ATM, and then he has the guy at the beginning.
He looks directly at the ATM camera, and he's like, "Not this time, mon frere."
Yeah. So then, like at the beginning of this movie, we can go back to it, but there's a guy. Every movie has a street racing scene where he has to go and street race in the local scene and make a new ally. So in this, like at the beginning of the movie, he's in Cuba, and like the guy who's the Dom of Cuba shows up in New York and like drives a van and blocks the other camera that goes into the alley. And then he has this whole elaborate thing. He got the brothers from the beginning of Fast and the Furious 4, and then
I was stoked to see that.
Heist in Fast 5. Yeah, me too. Why are they not in the rest of the movies?
I know.
They get involved, and then he also gets Helen Mirren, who's Shaw's mom, in there, and they have like 5 minutes. So he's able to orchestrate all this, get all these people in that exact location, defeat God's Eye. Like, there's just no way. Like, how's there no camera in the bar? How's there no phones in the bar? All these things that we say God's Eye can hack.
If he's able to have these like clandestine communications with the Cuba Dom and the two Dominican brothers and Helen Mirren, if he's
get
able
a message to his crew,
just one message to say, hey guys, I know shit's weird, trust me here. And furthermore, in that same scene, right after all that, right? Like Letty chases him down, or it's a little bit later in that scene after the zombie mode, zombie time.
I was going to say that it's like World War Z
zombie time. Yeah. Letty grabs the briefcase and runs off, and then gets stopped by
Tormund.
Yeah, the first man or whoever, and Dom like has a moment with Letty. Like he just walks away and leaves them alone, and Dom could have just turned to her and been like, listen, I know things are crazy, just bear with me here. I have a son, all right? He could have said literally anything to her to let her know that he has a plan or is being manipulated or something, and he just doesn't say anything to her. It's ridiculous.
Even if you just said like family's all that matters or something, she would know that somebody that
I'm doing this for my
is in
family.
danger.
Yeah. It could have been Brian for all they know.
Yeah. Well, because they go out of their way, which, dude, honestly, like, obviously Paul Walker's dead. They could not bring Brian in for this. But this is, like, the exact kind of scenario where you would have to bring Brian in, because they go, like, Brian would know what to do, and they're like, no, we're not going to bring him in. It's like, this is the thing that you bring Brian in. I would understand if it was, like, another Fast and the Seven, like any other heist, sure, by all means, leave Brian out. But like this, where it's like you're going up against Dom, yeah, maybe you let his sister and brother-in-law know. Yeah,
because the stakes have shifted from stealing money or getting somebody's freedom to literally the fate of the world.
World War III and your brother.
Yeah. Speaking of launch codes, If they steal that nuclear football, can't the Russians just change their
Change
launch
the
codes?
Yeah, I'm sure they change like every 72 hours or something like that. Like there has to be a protocol for changing them.
Yeah. Like, okay, take the nuclear football or whatever. Then as soon as they have a moment, hey guys, bring, hey guys, hey Russians, somebody stole the nuclear football. Don't launch any nukes.
There's like I want to do the Mission Impossible movies eventually as like bonus episodes, but I'm pretty sure like the plot of of Ghost Protocol has them doing exactly the same thing, getting launch codes or something, and they're like supposed to be able to change them in real time. Like they were in the process of changing them, and then like the bad guy showed up early, so they had to give him the real launch codes and then go steal them back later. But it's like it's unreasonable to think that like these codes are static and that they cannot be changed.
Yeah, I think the only way that plan works is if they're trying to launch a nuke within a minute or two of getting the nuclear football.
So, yeah, this movie makes no fucking sense. Like of like all the plots, like this one just has so many holes where like all the other ones you can hand wave certain things and go like, well, this, like this. There's just like so many things you can pick apart and go, well, here's the solution. Here's the solution. Here's the solution. Here's the solution. Here's the solution.
And the fact that this is such a like more darker, dramatic movie than the other ones makes all of those leaps in logic way more apparent.
Yeah, and it's just I didn't realize it, but I guess like I don't think Paul Walker was that great of an actor. I don't even think Brian was that interesting of a character. Like he wasn't very multidimensional.
But he's charismatic.
There's something about the other like he was the linchpin. Like he was the one who knew Tej. He was the one who knew Tyrese. Like everything. So it does feel like something's missing.
Well, he's weirdly like the Han Solo of these movies, right?
Yeah, I guess he's
just like charming and like doesn't always know what he's doing, but
until like the fifth movie when he was like could start taking on people like Tony Jaa.
Yeah,
which that's in the seventh movie. But he becomes.
But I think he's kind of he's kind of cavalier and
he's cavalier, but he has some skills from being in the FBI, so you can go. He kind of fits in this world, like. Yeah, he's the only person who kind of makes sense in this world. Han as well, because as long as we've known Han, he's always been kind of like a criminal enterprise kind of person. And then Tej, we still don't know anything about Tej's backstory. Like in like two different movies, it's like, yeah, you guys don't know anything about my backstory. Don't worry about it. And that just makes it where Tej can do anything. It's kind of a cop out.
Yeah, except Land Ramsey, right?
Because he doesn't know her last name.
Okay, so at the end of this movie, there's a scene where Roman and Tej are like, "Yo, you got to pick one of us." Very Abed and Donald Glover and Troy. I like Community. I remember people's names. So at the end of this movie, they're kind of like talking to Ramsey, and they're like, "Hey, you have to pick which one of us. Like, which one of us do you like?" And she's like, "Well, you guys don't even know my last name, so why don't you figure that out?"
Well, she's like, "I like you both," and they're like, "Oh."
Yeah, which is ridiculous. And then also, I legitimately thought that Tej had already won Ramsey over and that they were boyfriend and girlfriend throughout this whole movie.
Because based off the last movie, they were always together and
yeah,
yeah,
they're always in the same car and shit. To the point where I was like, why doesn't Ramsey have her own car? Why is she always passenger with somebody? Yeah, so I was shocked.
Well, and they're like the way they have this little dialogue where like Roman is like, we have so much in common, and like Ted's just like, what the fuck do you guys have in common? And he goes, well, we're both like sexy, and when we walk into a room, like everybody notices us. Okay, and then Ted's just like, yeah, well, we literally have everything in common, and it's true. Like they do everything together. Like it's like that cheesy thing where like you see in movies, and we're so in sync, we complete each other's sentences. But in this, it's always like hacking stuff. Like they're formulating a plan, and then the other person just like reads their mind. Like they're so in sync.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense that they. No, I'm not saying that either one of them deserves her. That's not what they're saying. It's not. But if she was truly interested in them, like Tej is the logical choice.
Yeah, we've never seen her have any chemistry with Roman, really.
Not really.
Speaking of hacking, my favorite part of this movie is when Cypher and Ramsey are trying to out-hack each other, and it's just cutting from A to B, A to B, A to B of the two of them typing on a computer and being like, oh, she's good.
She's good. Not good enough. Oh, nope. Oh, I got it this time. Oh, nope. I'm out. Like Cypher one. This whole movie, like even from the beginning. So like, it's absurd from the beginning. Katrina watched maybe the first 10 minutes of the movie, and she's like, "This is fucking stupid," and left. But the beginning of the movie, they're in Cuba, and Cuba's beautiful. I would love to go to Cuba. And somehow Dom has like the most fucking bitchin' car on all of Cuba. Mm-hmm. And he's just he's having his honeymoon there with Letty, and he has a cousin, like an actual cousin there, who's just like he's kind of like how Brian was at the beginning of the first Fast and the Furious movie, like trying to get into racing, and he has like a boat engine in his car, and apparently he like challenged the Dom of Cuba to like a race and like lost, and he was supposed to give his car and like
I think he borrowed money.
Or what he did something, and so
he borrowed money and missed the payment.
Yeah, so he's supposed to give this guy the car, and Dom's like, "I'll race you for the car," and the guy's cool, but you got to like use this guy's car. So like Dom, like with his bare hands, is like ripping off doors off the car, ripping off fenders, not using tools. Right, they're just ripping this off. He's ripping the seats out of the car. He's like ripping components of the engine off, like no tools. He's just like ripping things off, and then he's like. He talks about, I don't remember what he called it, Cuban NOS. He puts like some weird gas on there, like laughing gas. And then like there's another thing when he needs a turbo. He like rips something off the fuel line and puts like the pull tab for a soda can on like a tube and like hooked it up to like the fuel line or some shit like that. I'm not a car guy, so I don't know exactly what it was.
No, that's basically it.
But at some point in this race, like as the guy's like, dude, this car's going to explode. And Dom's like, it's only a mile. I'll get there. And like as the race is going, you see like the manifold is just like starting to glow red hot, and then like they have these like shots that are like bird's eye view, and you just see the car going. You see this like red line because the engine's on like fire. Then eventually it blows up, and he flips a bitch and is like reversing, and like the car keeps exploding. And he uses it as a boost to win, and then he can't get out of he can't stop the car, so he ends up like driving it in the ocean. And
he jumps out at full speed.
Wearing only a vest and a wife beater.
He doesn't have a scratch on him.
Well, the thing is, like, he's done that in other movies, so I'll forgive that because he's done it in literally like the last 4 movies. But this one, like all the other movies, he'll hit the ground and he'll roll like 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And this one, he rolls once and stops, not a scratch on him, and just like watches this car explode.
And then like,
it's just like,
good.
You can keep you. He goes, "You can keep your car. I just wanted your respect." And it's like, what the fuck?
And then 15 seconds after the car blows up, the car hits a retaining wall, hits like an ocean wall, and flies 30 feet in the air and then crashes into the ocean. Polluting everything, by the way. So bad for the environment. Literally 15 seconds after he jumps out of this car, children are running up to him, and he like hoists one of them up on his arm, and he's like, "I'm Dom. Everybody loves me." And the children are like, "Yeah, Dom.
This is
absurd.
Cuba."
Somebody says this is Cuba. Everywhere they go, somebody has to announce that they're in the place that they are.
Well, the thing that drives me crazy about it is, so like part of this, I looked it up, was supposed to be like a nod to Brian. And apparently, like, he says Buster, and he does call Brian Buster a couple of times. So the idea is that Brian taught him how to do this little like Coke bottle or Coke can trick.
Yeah.
But at the very first race in the very first Fast and the Furious movie, like, Brian says something along the lines of like, "We'll race for pinks, but I really just want your respect." And then Dom says that, and everyone's kind of like laughs at him and everything. It seemed a little weird. And I don't think it's weird that Dom would race for respect. Like Han kind of said the same thing in Tokyo Drift. It was just a little contrived for me.
Yeah. What else, man?
One of the things I did like is that they called out Roman for being a bitch. So, like, after, like, what's her face gets him, like, on her side, it cuts to the middle of a heist. So we've talked about, like,
that really annoyed
movies.
me. That was super weird.
We talked about it in another, I think it was starting in Fast 5, like the first few movies, anytime they were in a car, we saw what they were doing in the car. And then in Fast 5, they were just like, "Oh, we need to go get cars." And then they just come back with cars like, "Hey, look at these cars we won in the race." So they kind of did this where like it just starts in the middle of the heist.
It starts at the end of the heist. They're like getting away.
Yeah, they're getting away, and it's just like they have this like giant wrecking ball that takes a bunch of cars, and they're like, "Hey, Roman, we didn't tell you about this because we knew you were going to be a bitch." And he's like, "What do you mean I was going to be a bitch? Like, you didn't drive out of the plane in the last movie. Remember that?" And he's like, "No, my car malfunctioned." So I did appreciate that they called him a bitch in this one.
Yeah, but then there's a thing at the end that makes that even feel weird to me. They let him take a Lamborghini out to Russia on the ice.
So that was where a bulk of the extended footage was. It was the final stuff. They specifically called out giving more screen time to Tyrese with the Lamborghini in Russia.
Well, that was super annoying to me that they allowed Roman to take this car that they knew wasn't going to work, and that he ended up not being able to drive on the ice in. And then he falls into the ice, into that freezing water, and he's like, fine. That dude's dead. You don't just take a dip in freezing water in the middle of Russia where there's no medical support and survive.
Yeah. No. And just get back into a car and keep doing what you were doing.
He was literally dry in the next scene too.
In your version, did he hit one of the bad guys on the snowmobile with the car door?
Yeah, he sure did.
Okay. So, let's just... Now, granted, we know they're superhuman at this point, but this was real life. If you were coming at me on a snowmobile, and the only thing I had to defend myself was a car door, and I were to pick it up, sure, I could pick up the car door in a Lamborghini. It's probably fairly light, fiberglass, metal, weave, whatever. Would it knock you the fuck off your snowmobile? Sure. Would it shatter every bone in my body when I swung a car door at you and you're driving at me on a snowmobile at 60 miles an hour? Yes. Like, it would make more sense for him to toss it up in the air and let the bad guy drive into it. But yeah, he uses a car door as a shield for like machine guns, and then picks it up, swings it, knocks a guy off the snowmobile, and then somehow doing that causes like another vehicle that has a bunch of missiles coming to like spin out and kill like all the other bad guys.
No, you're confusing two things. He hits the guy with the Lamborghini door, and then
he grabs the gun and shoots like 5 guys.
Yeah, and then he expert marksman shoots all these other guys, and then a little bit later, Dom like
killer.
Yeah, exactly. And like nothing has told me that Dom is an expert Roman is an expert marksman. You know, a little bit later, Dom comes down a hill, and he hits the missile truck.
That's
and then
right.
All the missiles hit the bad guy cars, which is another one that I wrote down. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then
also at the end of the movie, the nuclear sub explodes, and Dom is like, "Well, I guess this is my time to go." And then all the other cars show up out of nowhere,
form a shield around him,
and form a shield that prevents the fire from hitting him. And I just like, I don't know anything about thermodynamics, but I don't think that that's the way that fire works. I don't think that you can just put a car in front of it and stop a massive explosion
it would help
from hurting
a little bit, but not like a fire that big from a nuclear submarine blowing up.
They like cars.
Fire will get under the car.
Yeah, they're not
Fire will
flushed to the
get
ground.
over the car.
Yeah, probably hurt the person inside the car.
Yeah, dude.
I think, granted, like there's a shot at the end of the movie that tries to that like shows the shadow of the explosion and how the car shielded it, and it looks like he's right at the edge of the explosion. So maybe it was like just far enough away, but it still feels real silly.
So one of the other things, but like, okay, we can explain that, but what causes this thing to blow up is there's 2 absurd things with torpedoes in this movie. So there's a point where they miraculously destroy all the Russian separatists. One is, Tyrese taking out the snowmobile and then shooting a bunch of guys. The other one is, like you mentioned, the Vin Diesel coming at the last moment, knocking the missile truck, and it just perfectly hits every other truck that's still available with with its payload. And then immediately, like, there's no questions asked. Everyone's like, "Oh, Dom's back. He's on our side." Like, they don't assume he's gonna like fuck them up, but whatever. They just immediately like, "Oh, Dom's back," with no communication whatsoever. Mm-hmm. They can communicate somehow.
Oh,
and he's like,
well, yeah, and that's another thing. They're like, at one point, they're talking to each other in the cars. I think in an earlier mission, and it seems clear that they have like radios just in the cars,
or Bluetooth or something.
Talk normally, right? But then during this scene, everybody is talking to each other in their cars on the same team, which makes sense. But then Dom is able to communicate with them as well, even though he was just on the opposite side.
Yeah, like how did they know what frequency they were using?
Right.
But
He's just
So-
like talking normally over the sound of the car engines.
They take out all the separatists, and then Cypher is just like, well, shit, fucking fire torpedo. So like they fire one torpedo. The Rock like is like skiing on the side of his truck, like he's just like holding onto the door, and he's got his feet flat, and he's like sliding on the ice, and he grabs the torpedo and like redirects it back, and it blows something up. And then another torpedo shoots out, but this one's a heat seeker, and Dom is like, I've got this, and he's like leading this heat-seeking missile all around the ice, and then somehow, like, you know, granted the submarine's surfacing, so it's breaking ice, but he uses ice that's breaking as a ramp, jumps 30, 40 feet in the air, which there was not enough ramp space to do that, but somehow he jumps 30, 40 feet in the air over the top of the submarine. But it had like where the periscope is, a fin or whatever. But it's like where the submarine kind of has like this thing that
Dorsal
raises.
appendage.
Yeah, it has like essentially like a dorsal fin on a shark.
Yeah.
And somehow he clips, like he hits it. And like it would make sense if you were clipping like a building that's destructible that you might be able to spin your car. But he like hits this thing and miraculously just kind of like the car pivots in midair and then it keeps going, as opposed to just like hitting it and tumbling and just like he should have been dead on impact hitting this giant Russian submarine that's the size of a skyscraper. But no, his car just kind of bounces off of it like a ping pong ball and keeps going. It's stupid.
I think the best part of this movie was Jason Statham being a fun dad.
That's the part where I was mentioning like the last 20 minutes or so. Like I remember watching this when I saw this in theater. Katrina works the Renaissance Fair. Mm-hmm. And I would go at least one day and just like hang out with her. So there was one day, it was like towards the end of fair, and so we hung out most of the day, and then she had to go work, and then it was like the last day, so she was going to stay late. So I decided to go to a movie, and I watched this. Like I watched this movie in like a Ren Fair clothing at a movie theater.
That's awesome.
And I remember like being a little bored, and then the plane scene with Jason Statham just fucking like John Wicking all the way through the plane while holding a baby was fucking hilarious. The other scene, which I think this did come out before Deadpool 2, but this had like the same prison escape as Deadpool 2 did, like almost verbatim. It might even be the same prison set.
The prison looks very familiar. I noticed that too.
But that's fight you brought up, like at that point, The Rock is indestructible. Like he is just picking up people, throwing them. There's one point where we don't see him pick
the
up,
scene
he picks
opens
up,
where he's practicing by punching concrete as a punching bag.
Yeah, he's doing that. The doors open up because, just to explain the scene, towards the beginning of the movie, that heist that we came into the very end of it, Dom ends up like sideswiping the Rock's car, and so the Rock crashes. Dom takes the EMP, and then he's now evil Dom. The Rock gets arrested. He gets burned. Mr. Nobody comes with Little Nobody, Scott Eastwood, and is like, hey, we can get you out of here. You just have to admit you're a criminal. But then you could be like a faceless, nameless agent like us and have like total autonomy. And The Rock is like, nope, I'll get myself out of this. So Mr. Nobody arranges for the prison doors to open, and The Rock is like, no, I'm going to do it my own way. But then Jason Statham starts like parkouring and just kicking all kinds of ass. And The Rock's like, well, I got to stop Jason Statham. But he's like taking rubber bullets to the face. Like they're nothing. Like he's getting hit
He
in
goes,
the face with
rubber
batons.
bullets, bad idea.
Yeah, and it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? He's picking up. There's one point where you see like 3 soldiers, or 3 guards in full gear, and then it just splits to the hallway, and you see all 3 of them flying at the exact same time, as if he picked up 3 people at once. They're like, him and Jason Statham are punching people in the face that are wearing helmets.
Yeah, and they're just like going flying.
Yeah, it's fucking like it was a cool scene, but I do agree with you that it went a little long and it got to the point where it's a little unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean the baby thing is just fun though. You know, that was
The baby thing was fucking fantastic. That was worth watching it.
Yeah, but I think that's also taken from a Jackie Chan movie. I was looking for the name, I couldn't find it, but I'm pretty sure that's
I'm sure
that
that's
idea
been
is
done
taken
before.
from a Jackie Chan movie.
I've seen that in something else, but it was really good. Like seeing Jason Statham making the gooey goo like sounds as he's taking care of the baby. It's from The Pacifier with Vin Diesel.
That's the only way that they could redeem Owen Shaw was to have him save baby Dom.
Yeah, Owen and Deckard saved the baby. And it's just, I think the plane, I think when I left the movie, when I saw this in 2017, I went out thinking like that plane scene was worth the price of admission, because this was before a movie, what Movie Pass and AMC stub, so I paid for it. And I think walking out of it, I was like, that one scene was worth the price of an admission. The rest of it, like, I didn't feel like the submarine fight was all that interesting. And
Yeah.
I didn't I agree with you that the zombie car thing could have been interesting, but I think it was a little too much, and it was just all CG. Like, it wasn't any of them driving stuff.
And that's another example of them like racking up a massive body count off screen. Like Cypher, and it's, she's a bad guy. It's okay that she's killing people because she's a bad guy. We need to know that she's evil and stuff. But it feels weird when it's all happening off screen, and you have to like think about it for a second and be like, oh yeah, we saw that people were in some of those cars, and there's thousands of these cars. She's killing a lot of people.
There's one specifically where there's like a taxi that gets hacked, and it's like, I live in Los Angeles. There are taxis in Los Angeles, but like the taxi that was getting hacked just looks like your regular taxi. Like, it doesn't, like, I feel like it makes sense that you can hack a self-driving car, but there's no way there were that many self-driving cars in New York, especially a regular taxi. But the taxi driver jumps out and leaves his passenger in the car, so it's safe to presume that passenger got killed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you see like the end of the scene where we talked about Dom being all tricked out in this like special ops uniform, and all these cars, like there's explosions everywhere. They're all on top of each other. If anyone was in any of these cars, they're dead.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just feels like a weird cognitive dissonance that this movie.
No, it makes no sense. And the only other thing I have, of course, they killed Elena because we had to show that there were stakes that this kid could die, because what ends up you brought up the scene after he has this whole thing where he meets half the cast from the other movies to pull a fast one on Cypher. Letty gets the suitcase briefly, and then Tormund from Game of Thrones like grabs it, and Dom has to stop him from killing her. And then like Cypher's like, technically my guy got the suitcase, not you. So you failed. Boom, kills Elena. So we had to see that he was a bad guy and that there were stakes. So they killed Elena, which I feel bad. She never really had much to do in any of these movies. And then the other thing, we had to show that Deckard was actually a good guy, is he saved Ramses from like an exploding pillar when they're like getting briefed on who Cypher is. And they're like, well, let's just use God's Eye to find her. And then they use the God's Eye and they do reverse pings because she's masked. Like, oh shit, the call's coming from inside the house, and Cypher's just there and like blows up stuff, and Deckard gets like buried by this like pillar, and he can't move, and like Cypher like holds a gun to his head and is like, I could fucking kill you. Doesn't, for whatever reason, but then Ramsey's like, you saved me, and she's like, yeah, he's like, yeah, well, we're on the same team now. And then later we get like the bromance a little bit with Shaw and Hobbs, where like they're working on some cars in the garage, and Hobbs is like, I did some digging and I found out that you like were the best hero ever, like you're a superhero, and like you've never done anything wrong in your life, and you were framed. It's like, how the fuck did you not figure that out the last movie?
Yeah.
And they're like, Deckard's like, on another time, another place, we could have done some real damage together as friends or some shit like that.
Yeah, just fucking bro army guy talk, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, Roman
what else?
sucks.
I forget what the moment was, but I wrote down, how is Dom remotely a match for Cypher?
Just, he isn't.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. So she has this like, I would have liked if this came back. Like Batman Begins is a great example. So when Lucius Fox gets fired, the guy who's like running Wayne Enterprises is like, didn't you get the memo? And then at the end, we find out that Bruce Wayne was the one who bought all the stocks, and he's now like the sole owner of Wayne Enterprises again. He puts Lucius Fox in charge, and he's like, Lucius Fox to the guy who's like, didn't you get the memo? There's a scene that they set up perfectly for that, where Dom is going to like try to like fight Tormund and Cypher. And she's like, wait a second, here's the gun. You go ahead and kill me, but there's a bunch of guys here who are trained not to save me. They're paid very, very well not to save me, but to kill you and kill that baby. They don't give a shit if I survive. you can go here, and she's like, you don't know how many people we have here. There could be 5 or 6. There could be a couple of dozen. But you're thinking, oh, you're a badass, and Elena used to be a cop. Maybe you'll fight your way out. But then she like names all these contingency plans that she has to prevent him from fighting his way off the plane.
Right.
And she has this little thing like, everybody you can only control the actions of yourself, and all I can do is give you information. And so it would have been nice if at the end, once she realizes like, oh shit, Deckard Shaw's there, Owen Shaw there, if she had a conversation, and as we saw the reveal of Dom, hacking things and having that little rendezvous with everybody in New York, if he used some of her words against her, like, the only actions you can control are yourself, and you underestimated me, and this. But none of that. Like, there isn't any kind of comeuppance for her.
Yeah, and it feels like it's necessary because of what I said. It feels like everything we know about Cypher makes her totally overmatched for Dom. Like,
she's
it
the
seems
most dangerous
ridiculous.
person they've faced.
Yeah, it feels ridiculous that Dom was able to just like do all this stuff under her nose.
Yeah, there's just no way. He does not have the technical know-how to do any of the things he did, especially when we know.
And
that
she had been planning for this, or running an operation for a decade or whatever at this point.
To the point where like Mr. Nobody, it was like, I don't even know how to catch her.
Yeah. Oh, right. And this is another thing I wrote down because her digital identity is scrubbed from the internet every few seconds. However that happens.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I just burps as I said. So,
one more thing before,
like you said, the leaps in logic in this movie, like it's impossible to suspend your disbelief in this one.
Yeah,
I feel like all the other ones you can kind of go, but this one it's just like it's too much for me to go,
And not even, here's another example of something similar, but not quite the same. Earlier in the movie, I think it's actually the scene that you're talking about where Dom and Cypher both show up to the headquarters and steal the God's Eye back. And then as they're walking out, Cypher has a little moment with Deckard Shaw. And then Letty, so they're supposed to be knocked out for an hour, by the way. But Letty manages to come
Her
to
senses
immediately.
are scrambled.
Yeah. Letty comes to immediately and she's like, Dom, I can't believe you turned your back on family. And like he's like struggling to find the words to reply, and Cypher comes over and just makes out with him like give the impression that she's seduced him or whatever, which works in a trailer because you see that in a trailer and you're like, oh fuck, like Dom decided to start fucking this other chick, and that's what's going on here. But in the context of the movie, you're like, oh, we know that Dom doesn't
coerce.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be doing this. We don't know about the kid yet, but we know that he's there against his will and that he's just keeping his mouth shut for now. And it just seems so like contrived and silly, and it feels like the movie is hoping that we're dumb. It feels like it's talking down to its audience.
I
agree. This is pretty effective, right? Don't think about any of the motives behind this or anything.
I agree.
They're making
you're right. If it makes sense in the trailer, like when I saw the trailer, you go, "Oh, what is this? How did that happen? Like, did something similar happen to him that happened to Letty? Like, does he have amnesia or something?" But yeah, in this, it's just like, in the context of the movie, he doesn't want to do this, and that's just to fuck with Letty.
Yeah.
But to what end?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like it's maybe not a very good movie.
And then it ends with like this weird green screen rooftop in New York barbecue where The Rock is never in frame with anybody because he clearly didn't want to be there.
Yeah. Or he was there on time and just shot his singles, and everyone else had to wait for Vin and shoot later.
That's what it sounds like. I've heard some of the other interviews and everything, and it just sounds like Vin Diesel's a pain in the ass to work with now.
There's another scene where I think it's the New York scene right after the zombie time. Yeah, it's when all of the cars are like World War Z, like they're all following the limousine or whatever, and they're all acting as a hive mind. And Letty is like, oh, okay, Dom's here in New York. It's time for us to go to work. She says, now that's Dom. And it's not him at all. Like, why would she think that Dom can control 70, 80 cars at the same time? Why is that Dom?
Looking through my notes, I just found one more huge flaw in this movie. And I think we could be done picking it apart after this point. But the other kind of twist in this movie is not only does Dom meet with Helen Mirren, the brothers, the guy from Cuba, and arrange to defeat God's Eye, which it's weird that, once again, it's weird that Cypher couldn't figure out that, like, some of these people that he's known to be around magically pop up on computer, like, on there. You'd think she would have, like, scanners going for everybody he's ever worked with.
Yeah.
Whatever. But after they get the EMP and the nuclear football codes, and they're running around, there's a point where we see Dom shoot Deckard Shaw.
Yeah.
And then we find out, like, we see in the flashback scene that the Dominican brothers, are the ones who picked him up, and the mom gave him, like, adrenaline to get him back. Like, he didn't really shoot him. He used blanks or something. One, it knocked out Shaw. That's a little weird that Shaw getting, like, with all the shit we've seen Shaw take, getting hit by wrenches, getting full-on front collision car crashes in the last movie, that a blank is going to knock him out. But fine. I can see
also,
that it happens.
at that point, how does Dom know that Shaw is not a bad guy?
Because he arranged it with the mom. I don't know.
That's right.
So he arranged it with the mom and to figure out how to get Owen out. But the other thing is, later on in the movie, they're like, hey, where's Shaw? And little nobody is like, he didn't make it. They have, like, unlimited resources. Like, this is, like, beyond CIA level. Like, they don't think it's weird that they don't have access to the body, that this body never made it to the emergency room or the morgue. Like, how does little nobody know that he's dead? And then it's supposed to be this big reveal at the end of the movie when he shows up and pulls the helmet off after using a jetpack to get into the airplane. This movie has jetpacks. We just brushed over that. They use jetpacks to get onto a moving cargo plane. Yeah. Which Cypher's using as her mobile base. So they do all that.
How does that thing get gas?
Fuck if I know. Like, you would just think they would be like, you can't just land an airplane anywhere. You have to have flight plans. You have to fuel it. Yeah. It's hell of expensive, like, to be flying continuously. Like, they would have to be like, have airport notifications everywhere being like, hey, if a plane like this lands, fucking let Mr. Nobody know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But the other thing is just, like, we're supposed to have this twist, and it works for us as the audience. Like, oh, shit, Shaw's still alive. But how did they fool Mr. Nobody and Little Nobody?
Yeah, it's almost like it's not a very good movie.
I think this might be the worst one.
Yeah. I think you might be right, because 2 was silly, but it was low stakes.
It was low stakes, kind of exactly. Yeah. It still felt like it belonged in the world of the first movie.
This one feels aggressively stupid.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm done talking about this unless you have anything else.
No, I'm very done.
Give us your plugs, bud.
I am on Instagram at dyslexic, DYS, Alex IC. I'm on Twitter at Pulisci, Pulisci. If you want to follow along with what I'm watching, I'm on Letterboxd. That's Pulisci as well.
Excellent. And you guys can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at MDXpods. Just an announcement. I don't know when it's actually coming out, but by the time this episode drops, I will have recorded it. But I will be a guest on one of the Christmas specials on the Two Peas on a Pod podcast. So as soon as I have more information about that, I will put that on social media so you guys can check that out. But I'm going to be doing a top 5 Santa Claus in movies and TV shows episode of that podcast. So check it out when it drops. But that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Later.